What's going on, everyone? So one of the things Kevin Williamson has said, even recently, is that he wants Sidney Prescott to at some point have a happy ending, right? And most Scream fans, at least from what I've gathered, want to see at some point Sidney Prescott have a happy ending. Couple things about that. One is kind of hard to have a happy ending when you had to keep taking on Ghostface, right? Like I thought after Scream 6, right, she went and avenged Dewey. Perfect. She's got her family. She's living her life, right? Even got in Scream 6 where, they said she deserves a break, right? Like we're not going to call her. Let's just leave her alone. Like let her have it, right? And I do. I think that would be nice. I think it would be nice to kind of, have just kind of moved off of it. It's why I've talked about, I'm somebody that wants to move off Sidney Prescott. It has nothing to do with Sidney, her. I love the character. I grew up with Sidney Prescott. I grew up with Nev Campbell as a 90s kid, right? Party 5, all of it, right? So again, I love Sidney Prescott. I would love for Sidney Prescott to be in these films in some capacity. But at some point, I just think it starts to get a little repetitive, a little redundant. And it's like, how can this character have a happy ending? How many times can she be targeted by Ghostface before Ghostface just gets lucky, right? There's so many things that go into it where I want to see the Scream franchise continue. I'd love to see the Scream franchise continue forever, right? So and it's one of the few franchises that's not reliant on a Jason or a Michael or a Freddy, or, you can do this forever with new characters, so on and so forth. And I want to see them kind of continue to build. Obviously, after, Melissa Barrera's departure from Scream, I get it's kind of like, okay, well, what's the safest route at this point? And it's Sidney Prescott, bring in Sidney. So I am all for Sidney being back in the fold for these next few films, probably another trilogy, right? But again, at some point, I'm hoping that Tatum, Isabel May's character, Sidney's daughter, I'm hoping that they do a good job with her, so maybe she can carry the franchise, whatever. At some point, I would like to see them move off of Sidney Prescott and her, if she can, have a happy ending. Now, you got to remember, this is a horror franchise. This is a slasher franchise. Not everybody gets a happy ending, right? But here's a couple things, right? One, like I mentioned, how does Sidney Prescott have a happy ending when you constantly are throwing her in events of Ghostface? Two, based on the trailer, now trailers can be very misleading, don't get me wrong, we don't know for certain, but based on the trailer, it looks like Mark dies, her husband, right? And if that's true, I mean, even in this image that you see on screen, right? You have Ghostface lurking in the background. He doesn't see. You see him wrapped in plastic, and then you see the blood splatter, right? Now, again, could be very misleading. It's very possible that that he's not actually the one that dies. Good, clever cutting, or, look, we've even gotten scenes in the trailer in the past, Scream 5, with the angel Ghostface and stuff on the wall and stuff. We've gotten things in the trailer that weren't in the actual movie. So I don't think it's crazy or far-fetched to think that, they might even have a scene where Mark dies, but he really doesn't, because they just cut it out of the movie type thing, right? But if he does die, how do you have a happy ending if he dies, right? So I think one of two things. I think either A, what Kevin Williamson said essentially spoiled the franchise going forward, right? Because again, how can you give Sidney a happy ending if her husband dies, the father of her children dies, or one of her kids die, or whatever, right? So I think that what that does, assuming that what Kevin Williamson says is true and stands, then basically we know no one in Sidney's family is going to die, which I think is a little disappointing, right? Even if you don't want to kill him, you don't want to let the audience and everyone know that, right? You want to have us believe that Mark can die or Tatum can die or whatever. Everybody's untouchable except for Sidney, right? And that's also why they killed Dewey. So we stopped thinking, because that was the problem. Every movie we know, Gil, Sidney, Dewey, they're untouchable. They might get roughed up. We might think for a moment they're dead, especially Dewey, but in the end, he's going to give the thumbs up because it's what he always does. So if you start doing things to where, you basically default back to that, it's like, then why? Like, and how many characters does that lead into, right? Like, again, like, at what point do we start to realize, like, hey, this is a slasher, this is a horror franchise. Not everyone has happened. But, most final girls in the franchise, as far as I know, all of them have died up to this point. Right? Like, outside of the ones that have been in, like, a couple movies, right? Like, you have characters that have been in, like, 2 movies, 3 movies, whatever. But, like, usually the main girl or the main character dies at some point, whether it's Lori or, it's just Nancy or, characters like that. Like, they always die at some point. Alice, things like that, right? So, to me, at some point, you're going to have to kind of pick a lane here. Now, the other thing is, too, is that, like, okay, if you want her to have a happy ending, I'm all for it. Right? Maybe that's maybe it's an absolute bloodbath, and the only ones that survive are Tatum, Mark, and Sidney. Right? And they ride off in the sunset. Still has all the carnage. But the other thing is, too, is, like, you set up and establish that Sidney's basically never truly safe. Right? Like, because unless you just, like, get rid of Ghostface entirely, how do you really have a happy ending? Unless she does something where, she basically eliminates the idea of Ghostface, erases it from existence, right? She just, like, jumps in a DeLorean or something and goes back into time and erases the memory of Ghostface in everyone's minds. Like, she's never going to be truly safe. She's always going to be looking over her shoulder. She's always going to be prepared. You see it in this trailer, right? So, my thing is that, like, I think we should forget the whole Sidney have a happy ending, right? Like, I think you should have the ending that makes sense accordingly, whether it's tragic or, poetic or whatever, right? Like, and that doesn't mean she has to necessarily die. Right? She could live, but I think we have to, like I said, you have to pick a direction. You can't have both. You can't have constant Scream movies forever with Sidney Prescott in it and then go, oh man, we really want her to have a happy ending. Right? It's got to be one or the other. Either A, you want Sidney to have a happy ending, then give her a happy ending, leave her alone, because they're not going to stop making movies. It's just like Halloween. It's just like all the Friday the 13th, all these things. Right? Like, we know in a couple of years, we're going to get a new Halloween film, right? A new Halloween trilogy or whatever, right? Like, they're going to do Scream forever, right? Spyglass paid like $500 million for Scream. It was like other things too, but it was like the big cash cow was Scream. So, that they're going to probably pump out another 10 of these if they can. So either A, you're fine with Sidney losing people and things getting tragic and crazy and her just kind of in this, constant mouse wheel of death, or you want her to have a happy ending. Which, if you want her to have a happy ending, then fine. That's great. I want her to have a happy ending. Write her a happy ending and then just let her sail off into the sunset. Let's create a new, era of Scream with new characters and stuff that have nothing to do with Sidney Prescott. Right? Like, that's what I'd like to see. Let's stop dragging her into the fold every time. Like I said, I get this installment because you kind of didn't really have a choice. But after this installment, like, I don't want another 10 Sidney movies. I want to, again, go other directions. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass the question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. What do you think? How you feel with your thoughts? Agree with me? Disagree with me? Kind of mixed in the middle. How do you feel? Either way, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.